Perhaps the most interesting thing about crabapple is the fact that Bach selected this as a remedy when he did. That is to say, that in the sequence of 19 new remedies in 1935, crabapple sits between beech and walnut and holly. With these essences in the second 19, we look at the emotional reactions to traumatic events. So we see the different ways that we respond and what happens if there is not a return to normal emotional balance. In the case of crabapple, the traumatic event is the sense that some poison has entered which must be drawn out. Those are Bach's words. On the face of it, this seems to indicate a physical problem. So we might think that the problem is something physical, like food poisoning. But it could also be an emotional or mental condition. And then we might look again at Bach's words. Those who feel as if they had something not quite clean about themselves. All in all, it is a bit of a mystery. What did he have in mind? And what was the real problem that led him to the crabapple tree? And this is where I believe we can look to left and right, as it were, and think about beech, walnut, and holly. In each case, the remedy state indicates a kind of invasive problem and our reaction to emotional toxicity. With beech, it led to intolerance of others. With walnut, it concerns the interference we can experience from other people. And with holly, we see what can happen when the negativity becomes internalized and embedded in our system. In each case, we need to return to balance and the normality of a healthy exchange with our physical, emotional, and mental environment. So, getting back to crabapple, how might we see that in this flowering tree? If we just look at the blossom, one thing is clear. This is a beautiful moment in the year. The flowers are a brilliant combination of pale crimson and white. So the buds are strongly coloured and the open flowers white. The impact of this is simply exciting and delightful. So these spring flowers bring elation, optimism, and the sense of freshness and a new life that we cannot see without being carried away on a tide of joy. But that doesn't really explain why Bach selected this flower for this purpose. It is true that apples have traditionally been viewed as healthy fruit. We say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And there is something cleansing about the experience of eating an apple from the moment we bite into the crisp, juicy flesh, all the way down through digestion and onwards into the gastrointestinal tract. But it wasn't the apple that was used to make the mother tincture, but the flowers. And in any event, the fruit from the true crabapple tree is small, green, and intensely acerbic. Anything but sweet and flavoursome. But the blossoms are intensely sweet smelling. And maybe this is the correct line of approach, because scent can change the way we feel, and that is not easy to describe in words. One other aspect of Dr. Bach's description calls for attention. He says that people in a crab-apple state focus on small problems, disregarding what may be something far more serious. So they focus upon the detail and overlook the whole. So for crab-apple, we need to take a step back and view the whole scene in proportion and not become obsessed by some small detail. And when we look at the tree, we find it hard to isolate one flower in a narrow view, simply because there are so many flowers. So the tree brings us to a holistic experience, by which I mean that we see the whole of the tree in flower, the tree in the ground, and the place in the landscape. It leads us to a wider view. So that means that we are led away from the focus upon small details and to a return towards the normal balance of perception. This sense for wholeness is reinforced by the structure of the tree itself. There's not a strong central trunk, but multiple branches which fan out in all directions. So we might say that the emotional condition of crabapple is to move away from a central and directed attention towards a sense for the whole. Bach repeats the thought that crabapple is for cleansing and specifically to purify wounds if poison has entered the body. How he gets to that medical observation is not something we can easily understand in terms of the language of plants. Perhaps it's written into the mythology and symbolism of the apple.